Hey everybody, it's Barbara and welcome back to my channel, Straight Out of Context. We're going to dive right into GYPSY ROSE Blanchard, Season 2 of Life After Lockup. We're going to go right into Episode 9 and Episode 10 recap. So not very exciting. They were only going to do 9 episodes and then Lifetime was still doing the editing process, and then they had to make an Episode 10 and 11 to cover all of the footage from the birth, etc. You know. Episode 9 begins with GYPSY looking like the south end of a northbound dog. I mean, practicing yoga on all fours. While Ken is doing all of the bitch work, the housework, the cleaning, the dishes, the cooking, all of that. Things that GYPSY absolutely will never do because she's lazy and she thinks she is above having to actually be a wife, a mom, and an overall adult human being who has to take care of things. She literally says that they had no tradition growing up, she and her mother, and then she goes on to talk about exactly that, how her mother continuously made the same little Christmas treats and dinners every single year, and that she wants to make them for Aurora next year, which is odd of GYPSY to do, but she does this all the time. She literally is saying simultaneously in one breath that she only got 2 Christmas gifts every year from her mom for 24 years, that they didn't have Christmas traditions at all. They never had family, never had dinners, never had get-togethers. But then she goes on to talk about a tradition that her mother always did, making a certain dessert treat to make it look like little mice or whatever it was. She catches herself up in her own lies all the time, because while she's trying to sell you this false narrative, she's telling you the truth of what she actually remembers, and she actually remembers having Christmas traditions with her mom. But then this episode goes into how Mia is having her graduation pictures done, and of course Christy says something that is very triggering, that she is very, very proud of Mia, that Mia is the one child she never had to ever worry about. And then it goes into GYPSY, how she is wearing a wig because she has a history of wigs, but this time it's her coming into her womanhood because she's choosing to have a wig this time. Well, she could have had her long hair if she would have stopped dyeing it every 2 weeks. And of course, she was going to do pregnancy photographs. She has to sell them to TMZ and People Magazine, etc., etc. But it's no coincidence that she's choosing to do it at the same exact time that Mia is doing her college graduation photos for graduating from the nursing program and becoming a registered nurse. And Christy goes on to talk about how she's very proud of the young woman that Mia is, that she was the perfect kid, that this is what she wanted to do, that she had no words to explain how proud she is of her and Rod's daughter, and doesn't say a single word about GYPSY. And then it pans back to Ken, how Ken is going above and beyond for Christmas to make sure everybody has gifts. And then GYPSY has to go to the hospital. Oh my gosh, she's been dilated to 3 for weeks previous to the birth of Aurora. And it goes back to Ken, ends up doing the whole Christmas dinner for everybody. They eat together, they exchange gifts, blah, blah, blah. We know that 3 days after Christmas, GYPSY does end up giving birth. And Aurora is brought into the world, and that's that. But this episode really was not much of anything. But, however, GYPSY did post this on social media, trying to basically explain away her behavior as postpartum depression, which, if that's true, GYPSY, show us where you're diagnosed with it. I have a very strong opinion that GYPSY ROSE Blanchard has Munchausen syndrome because she uses medical everything to try and hide her negative, bad, impulsive, erratic behavior and abusive and toxic behavior of other people. She tries to hide behind that. Postpartum depression or not does not give you a free license to go and talk to Ryan Anderson behind Ken Urker's back, especially after your divorce was finalized a month earlier, because GYPSY herself is seeking Ryan out because she wants the emotional and egotistical fulfillment that Ryan gives her that Ken is not giving her when she wants it. Tough titty, said the kitty when the milk ran dry. And GYPSY ROSE Blanchard, your milk is dry, honey. You can't be a 2 and be expected to be treated like a dime piece. It's life. It's how things happen and how families adjust, especially after giving birth to a baby. It's never going to be about you ever again. Cue the deleted apology video to Ryan Anderson where she literally says verbatim, "I don't regret having Aurora." Yes, you do, because you can't manipulate Ken with her. Ken can actually now manipulate you with her. You didn't think that through and you shot yourself in the foot with that one, didn't you? Well, she is here and she is a human being and she is a baby. And yes, you are forced to be a better person now because the world is watching. Or so she says. But yeah, listen closely.
My name is Christy Blanchard and I have been challenged by Ken Euchre to do the Ice Bucket Water Challenge for mental health. And I nominate Tori Spelling.
Do it quick.
Okay.
Not slow.
Oh God, my husband's gonna do it. I don't even want to know. Just do it.
Okay, ready.
Oh shit.
I'm gonna stand back.
Oh God.
I'm gonna use the zoom on this thing.
1, 2, 3.
Oh!
1, 2, 3.
Son of a bitch!
You want to do it or no? You ready? I'll warm you up, baby. There you go.
How did that feel?
Son of a biscuit eater. Woo!
Look at all that ice.
Oh my God.
Dude, I think you showed Ken up.
Another thing that I want to point out about this is I see that Gypsy always likes to skirt around the fact, or at least not bring up the fact, that Nick was level 2 autistic. The guy was very inexperienced with women. I think he didn't have any experience with women, and he was level 2 autistic. And we've all seen those videos of Ruby. If anyone knows who Ruby is, I'm pretty sure. Go look up who Ruby is. It's one of Gypsy's many little alter egos or personalities, whatever you want to call it. But this was a premeditation of a crime for 2 years. It's not like she just woke up one day and just had some, big, revelation and big panic attack and was just like, I need my mom gone. This was elaborately planned for over 2 years. And she just convinced the guy that was not, all there, he's autistic, and they're thinking like, hey, you're coming to slay the dragon and you're going to save the queen. Just like one of the Disney films that she watches. No different than that. And she would put on the wigs and the cosplaying and all the outfits to play the part for him. And he bought right into it. And he's the one that's stuck with life in prison, and she's just remorseless over this. Where's Nick's second chance? How come he doesn't get one? This is the first case I've ever seen in my life where the mastermind, the one that plans this, the one that has the most to gain out of this, if not the only one that has something to gain out of this, got some sweetheart deal and got to go free after just a few short years and didn't get the most time. Charles Manson didn't wield a weapon either. This is Gypsy saying, oh, well, I didn't actually wield a knife, therefore I'm not as involved as he was. No, you just handed him the knife and groomed him to actually commit the crime. You did have a murder weapon, Gypsy. Nicholas Godejohn was your murder weapon. That's exactly who your murder weapon was. And he did the wielding for you. Because that's what you had him do. That's what you groomed him to do, and you had 2 years to get it done, and you got it done. Because we all know what you're like when you don't get your way. Now, again, I like to reiterate, Charles Manson didn't lay a finger on anybody. He went to jail for his whole life. Where was his sweetheart deal with a reality show? If anyone's familiar with the Dan Markel case, look how many people are serving life sentences right now. Everybody that helped pay for the hitmen. The hitman actually got less time. One of the hitmen actually got less time. He actually got, I think, 12 years. The other one took it to trial, didn't take a plea deal, and he got life. But the one of the trigger men, he got a deal. The rest of the ones that paid for it and planned it and had the most to gain out of it actually ended up in prison for the rest of their life. And another one from that family, the Adelson family, Donna, the mother, the one that provided the money and most of the correspondences, she's about to go on trial right now, and she's looking at the same fate as her son, who just got sentenced to life in prison, I think, 1 or 2 years ago. So, again, this is the only case I've ever seen where the mastermind actually got little to no time. Make that make sense.
Lifetime is using this video to promote the last episode of season 2 of GYPSY Rose Blanchard, Life After Lockup. And of course, it's because she says this.
And I'm not a monster.
And the problem is that she knows internally, she knows deep inside, she has not done the work to actually be accountable, to actually face the real consequences of what she did. She knows she's a monster inside. She knows that she's a horrible person, because she continuously does things like this while trying to tell you falsely that she's a good person, that she's moved on, that she's doing all of these great things in life as a free and independent woman. But this is a person who was 24 years old and orchestrated for over 4.5 years the very strategic life taking of her own mother. And we know that on May 11th of 2014, on Mother's Day, this is what she actually felt and thought at that time about her own mother. She is a monster. There is absolutely no reason or rhyme to why she took her mother's life other than she didn't want to get caught for lying for a disability check every month, for whatever fraud that her and her mother had been committing together, for the free house, for the free gifts, for all of the trips and the charities that had given them money. But it goes deeper and is more narcissistic, psychopathic, and sociopathic than that. GYPSY took her mother's life because her mother told her no. That meeting and dating strange men on the internet was not allowed, and it was not a good idea, and it was very unsafe. She took her mother's life because she didn't get her way, and she was used to getting her way, so spoiled and entitled that she felt entitled enough to take her mother's life, to lie about it, to pin it on somebody else, to hide it and cover it up, to frame someone else. GYPSY Rose Blanchard was not a victim of any kind of abuse by her mother, and I would dare her to take an FBI administered lie detector test. Easy enough. Prove it. Answer all of the questions that we have. Prove it. Show me one real piece of circumstantial or forensic evidence that she was abused. She can't. So this immediately goes into episode 10, where she gives birth to Aurora on December 28th, 2024, which is the 1-year anniversary of her release from prison for second-degree murder, when we know what she did was first-degree premeditated murder. She was facing the death penalty originally. This whole entire scene is supposed to be played up like, this is a blessing, this is destined by God, this is the road of life. I beg to differ. I beg very greatly to differ, because this is very strategic GYPSY Rose Blanchard just failing to utilize her birth control or her plan B, which she was very capable of utilizing before with Ryan Anderson. But of course, she didn't want to have a baby with Ryan Anderson. She wants to have a baby with Ken, to trap Ken. And you know what? Now she's trapped by that choice. She's trapped by that same exact choice and circumstance. That is fate. That is destiny. That is God's karma. So it pans to Ken and his mom talking, and he wants to make an announcement about the baby. And GYPSY's like, I don't care. I don't know why you care. It reminds me of something that she once did to Ryan Anderson, when Ryan was like, well, it's revenue. You're making money doing that. That's your job. That's what you've been telling your parole officer this whole time, that you want to be a public figure. You want to be a social media influencer and a content creator. And then she turns around and gets mad at him because he says, well, that's revenue. I mean, that's literal money that you have made off of live gifts or your videos. You need to pull that out beforehand. And she says,
does he know that?
I don't care.
I know, but did you tell him that?
I don't care.
I get it.
She just did the same exact manipulation, gaslighting, abuse tactic on Ken, because he wants to announce his daughter's arrival into the world, and he wants to get ahead of it before anybody else can find out or do the announcement for him. And I agree with that. Ken goes on to tell GYPSY, I just would think that it would be nice to announce our news, reminding her that Aurora is his daughter just as much as she is hers. But to a sociopath, a psychopath, and a narcissist, it's just a tool. A baby is a tool. One thing I do agree with, though, is that Rod says, my mom always says, God has a plan for us. And that is correct, because his plan for GYPSY is global humiliation and exposure by her own words, actions, choices, and behaviors. GYPSY Rose Blanchard grew up using society, using community, using social media, using charities using good altruistic human beings, decent human beings, pretending to be a paraplegic in a wheelchair, pretending to be gravely sick with cancer, pretending to be medically ill when she, in fact, was not. And now she's turned around and done the same exact thing after she's taken her mother's life. And the sad part is really coming up here because Ryan Anderson has spent the last year still wrapped up in the manipulation, in the abuse and trauma that he has suffered mentally, verbally, physically at the hands of GYPSY Rose Blanchard. And he goes on to say that he got a call from her that it was not going to go out of his way to go sign this paper so that way the baby could not have Anderson as the last name or do this other DNA test. And he also says that she probably did this behind Ken's back, which we now know is true. It pans to GYPSY saying that I have never had any responsibility in my life. I never had a job. I hadn't had anything to hold me accountable. Having this baby that solely depended on me, I'm like, I want to be my best self for her, but I also want to be my best self for me. And it definitely is a shift, an emotional shift that I have never experienced before. You mean to actually tell me that you pled guilty to second-degree homicide of your mother? You have completely thrown Nicholas Godejohn under the bus. You cost his mother, Stephanie Goldammer, her life and her future with both of her sons. And you're going to sit there and now say that you want to be a better person? Like, none of that made you think that you should become a better fucking person and work on that for 8.5 years in prison instead of doing 17 documentaries and interviews for money. Now it's just further gaslighting society into believing that she's going to be a better person because she has a baby. Guess what? There's lots of shitty mothers out there. In fact, there's probably more shitty mothers than there are non-shitty mothers out in the entire world of 8 billion humans. GYPSY Rose Blanchard choosing to have unprotected sex and having a child as a result of that unprotected sex does not make her a good mother or a good human, nor does it make her a truth teller. But let's continue on. Episode 10. It pans to Ken talking about how he sleeps and works. And then GYPSY says, I can't always hold her. I can't always be that, only person taking care of her. So, I mean, it does help to have... I know, a pretty big part of Ken completely cuts her off and says, no, I have been here. I have been helping. I have been doing everything that I can. I have been her father. I've been doing what I can to help. And she says, I know. I was just saying, like, if I was alone. He says, right. And she goes on to say, I feel like I've just been trying to figure it all out on my own. And he says that there's going to be a lot coming up, but that he is here physically for her and the baby as long as she wants him to be there physically for her and the baby. And she goes, I know. So he shut that down really quick. And then GYPSY sits there and looks ridiculous on camera. She then says, I'm trying to have better communication with Ken, but sometimes I will say how I feel and maybe not get the response that I'm looking for, because she just tried gaslighting the motherfucker and she wasn't getting the response that she wanted, which is him doing everything for her hand on foot. She then goes on to say that she doesn't get the level of comfort that she's looking for from Ken. No, she didn't get the response she wanted, gaslighting him. So he says, are you feeling okay? And she's like, yeah, while physically trying to give the body language cue to Ken that she's not doing okay. It's just her internal anger that he did this on camera and he shut that gaslighting down real quick and redirected it back to her. She tried to paint Ryan as a monster and now she's trying to paint Ken as a bum who does not give her what she needs. Now, GYPSY is almost 34, and she's talking about how her emotional needs are not being met after giving birth. And her greatest fear is that Ken will get tired of it, that he will get tired of how emotionally taxing she is. I cannot point it out to anybody any better than this. This is GYPSY telling you the truth about who she really is, that she uses verbal, mental, emotional, and even physical manipulation to literally get what she wants, the same way she never ever had any kind of responsibility. And she hates the fact that it's all being exposed to who she really is. She knows she's a monster. She knows she's a liar. She knows she's a manipulator. She knows she has some kind of cluster B personality disorder. Deep down inside, she knows it. She knows that society is not going to be gaslit any longer by her, that we see her for exactly who and what she really is. And she is telling us with her words. But then furthermore, Ryan is hanging out with his one friend saying, he's a really great dude and he knows the hurt that GYPSY has caused him and the pain that he has had to deal with. He knows the pain that's in my eyes and that his buddy had just seen it. So he goes on to talk to his friend about how he told him recently that him and GYPSY started texting again. And his friend says, yeah, she can't keep stringing you along. I mean, she can't keep doing that to you. She just wants to see if you would reply. She wants to see if you were with somebody. She doesn't want you to move on. She's just trying to keep you in that coat pocket as a safety net. He says, you think so? And the friend says, yeah, I do. But you can't let her do that either, because then she'll do it again and again and again. And he's right. We have been telling Ryan for over a year. And see, that's the thing. You let somebody do something to you once, they'll do it to you again. And they think they can continuously abuse you that way. You wanted a kid with her, and she chose to have not that kid with you. She chose to have that kid with somebody else. His friend goes on to say, now that is closure. That's it. He says, good call. That's like, to hell with you, right? He says, yeah, I would rather be with this guy and have this guy be a dad to my child than you. And that ain't right. You would be a really good dad, Ryan. His buddy says that he doesn't understand why that line of communication is open. He doesn't understand what that's for. He doesn't understand if she even knows why she's doing it. Cluster B personality disorder. Or if she understands why she is having these kinds of issues, but that they will always continue to have these kinds of issues. And that his advice is to just cut it off completely. At some point, you have to be accountable for what you do. No, Ryan, GYPSY Rose Blanchard has to be accountable for what she does to harm, abuse, create toxic spaces for other people. And look at what she has done to social media in the past year and a half. She has turned very loyal, devout friends and family members into monsters, creating people who stalk, harass, cyberbully, dox other human beings by proxy for her. She has turned TikTok and Instagram into a cesspool of toxicity. She has turned D-Rate TV into a cesspool of toxic activity. She then has a sit down with her dad and her stepmother talking about how she really liked being friends with Ryan years and years and years ago before they became romantic. And he says, yeah, just imagine, okay, you and Ken, the moment that you guys get into a little tiff, a little argument, whatever, and then you start giving Ryan this emotional currency behind Ken's back, like, that's going to create not only a need in her, but a need in Ryan for that emotional currency. And of course, those lines get blurry. She then makes excuses for her behavior. When I am not understood by Ken or by my parents, that, yeah, I just reach out to Ryan because Ryan understands. No, you reach out to Ryan because you're a fucking narcissist and a sociopath, and you want him to fill a void that you are not meeting yourself, or that Ken is not providing you with. So this is the shit that pisses me off the most. And then she has been sending glamour shots and shots of the baby, not just a picture of the baby. She is sending him lots of photographs. Look at the picture roll down at the bottom. Not only that, but look at all of the screenshots that Ryan has saved on his phone. And he's still telling GYPSY that she's beautiful. Ryan is sitting there looking at another man's baby, literally picking apart little bits and pieces of her face to see if that actually could be his child, because she was born premature. She was born weeks early. But zooming in, you can see all the screenshots. You can also see the other photographs that GYPSY had been sending him because he has them saved to the camera roll. GYPSY looking high as F, sending him pictures of her, quote, sleepy look, because she knows that Ryan likes the sleepy, I just woke up look. GYPSY, you truly are a POS, and you had the nerve to call Nick that. And he goes on to say, But this was just the cards that I was dealt. And Ryan knows that the moment he goes and does another paternity test and it comes back that Gypsy's going to cut off communication with him completely, because then she has what she wants, which is Aurora's birth name changed and him off of the birth certificate as the father. These are not the cards that you were dealt, okay? You played a game with a convicted murderer, a sociopath, a narcissist, and a psychopath. And those are the cards that she dealt you. You're the one who is continuously playing this game. So it now becomes your accountability and responsibility to stop playing the game with the POS. Episode 11, Ken puts his foot down. He knows Gypsy is a liar and a manipulator. He knows what she is truly doing. And he's more intelligent than her. He's always going to have the one up, because he tells her that if you go and meet with Ryan, that's it. I'm moving back to Texas and I'm taking Aurora and I am filing for custody right away. Good on you, Ken. Good on you. And do not legally marry her. I'm telling you, because it will make it worse on you legally. He says, we are dragging Aurora through the mud on this, and it doesn't need to be like this. If she really wants to have a closure meeting, Aurora is not going to be there. And he is adamant, that is my child and it's not happening. She says that it was Ryan's ultimatum to me that he was either to meet with me. No, Ryan denied meeting with you. See how she's lying to everybody? Or that the baby can stay in Anderson forever. She is lying. Ryan has not met up with her. He does not want to meet up with her. And look at his camera roll. You see screenshots of text messages. He never gave Gypsy an ultimatum about meeting. In fact, it's been the other way around. She did 2 whole episodes this season all about that. And then she acts so surprised at the divorce hearing that he doesn't want to see her and doesn't want to meet with her. But then she's saying that Ryan now has an ultimatum that she has to meet with him. No, didn't happen. She's lying about Ryan again. She creates this drama and then says, let's all just calm down, okay? We can all be civil and be adults about this. Ryan is seen talking to his attorney. He's also seen going and having an independent DNA test. And then you see Ken go into a jewelry store. Don't do it, Ken. And I'm telling you right now, the CEO of the A&E network would be very smart to shut this entire shit show down and not partake in any more seasons, interviews, TV shows, or any deals with Gypsy Rose Blanchard. Not after she literally just did what she did.
I'm sorry that you fell in love with a piece of shit like me. Keep making content.
Oh, don't worry. We will continue making content. But you know what? I think A&E Network, who owns Lifetime, is going to be very interested in knowing that they are working with a self-proclaimed piece of shit, especially proving she's one after what she did to Ryan. I think it's time that A&E be held accountable too. And don't forget to subscribe, like, turn on notifications, and share.